Thank you. We're going to call the meeting to order at 6:07, the Monday, February 5th meeting of the Human Services Committee. I call the meeting to order. May we have a roll call?
If you're talking, we can't hear you.
All right, audio should be working online now. Thank you, Councilmember Harris.
Okay.
All right, roll call.
All right. Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Councilmember Burns. Here. Councilmember Ravel.
Here.
Councilmember Harris.
Present.
Councilmember Harris.
Here. Thank you. With the quorum present, the meeting is called to order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of November 28th, 2023. May I have a motion?
I move approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of November 28th.
Moved by Councilmember Hedikatis, seconded by Councilmember Burns. All those in favor, Councilmember Ravel?
We need a clarification in the minutes, because if you look at item HS5 in the minutes, it's not clear what the motion was that the committee approved. This is the motion.
One second. If I can ask for folks that are putting seats in the middle here, you're blocking the path to the door. I don't know. The fire chief isn't here, but I would suspect that he wouldn't be enthusiastic about that. So if we can just keep the doorway clear. Sorry, Councilmember Ravel.
It's not clear what the committee voted on in terms of the beekeeper license complaint, because the language says that the staff recommends that the committee approve or deny the license issued. And then it says, motion by Councilmember Heracardis. I mean, so I think we need to say that, moved by Councilmember Heracardis to approve the license, because otherwise we don't know what we did.
Thank you. Is that a motion?
Yes.
Moved by, amendment to the minutes is moved by Councilmember Ravel, seconded by Councilmember Burns. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, any abstentions? The ayes have it. The minutes are now amended to indicate that Councilmember Hedikatis moved for approval, and it was approved. Councilmember Hedikatis.
I think Council Ruggie had told us earlier that since we have remote participation, we need to do a roll call vote on everything.
Okay.
So,
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns. Aye. Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
aye.
Thank you. I do want to note, I think my understanding is if the whole meeting is virtual, you need to do roll call, but if just one person, it's still, that's not required.
I'll double check, but I think it's just cleaner for the record if we do a roll call.
Sure. Okay. So the minutes are approved. So that brings us to public comment. We, for the number of folks in the room, don't have that many folks signed up. So we'll start with, and we may have some folks online, I'm not sure, but we'll start with Hector Hernandez, followed by Joseph St. Clair, then Alvaro Gomez. So Hector, then Joseph, then Alvaro. And folks will have 2 minutes, which is the rule for the committee.
Okay. Ready? Okay. Well, leaf blowers are noisy and can cause noise and can cause pollution, which can be harmful to both people and wildlife. They emit pollutants and dust, which can be harmful to the environment. On leaf blowers can turn rocks, sticks, mulch, grass particles, pieces of glass, and other debris into projectiles that can cause cuts, lacerations, and eye injuries. Operators and are also subject to hearing loss, ergonomics, related injuries, and electric shock. Let the record show the majority of landscape companies located in Evanston are of Hispanic Latino orientation. What we have come across is the new law, the portal to apply for compensation for such a quick and drastic change did not leave much opening for businesses to sign up for the funding provided by Evanston. Also, what we are clearly seeing is behind this new reform, a lot of citizens from Evanston have acted in such forms of harassment, such as my company, have fallen victim to Caucasian citizens not only yelling, but also driving while recording several times to get the right shot. People have even trespassed to gain some evidence of our crew members using gas-powered blowers. Lithium might not be as loud as the gas blowers, but the impact on insects, rocks, sticks, dust particles remain, not to mention, they're 3 times heavier than gas-powered. Lithium is known to pollute our waters, so no, my friends, Evanston is not the cleanest, nor do I feel to be the safest environment to work nowadays. The racists within the community have found a reason to rise and take time out of their day to hunt hardworking taxpayers down for something they have been doing when the Italians ran the game. How many more taxes must we, the people, pay to gain some respect? They tax our vehicles as if we don't already pay insurance and registration to fund their $1 million Optimas. But during construction, the Evanston workers are permitted to use gas-powered blowers. One last thing, the city has uploaded companies outside of the city whom are complying with the new ordinance. This puts longtime tax-paying Evanston-built companies under the constructed setup for failure, leaving the outside vultures, bigger companies, to come and pick up the clientele from our hard-earned days. Now, I got a few talking points. Who's enforcing the ordinance? City residents should not be the enforcers. They should not be harassing, following, or intimidating companies by their employees. Racial disparities, who are the majority of landscapers, and the owners of the companies, who are the majority of the reporters. Landscaping companies need more flexibility and some lenience in the introductory period, not giving enough notice to make larger purchases to comply with the ordinance, and not sufficient funds to assist all of the companies that require funding and purchase of the battery powered. Political climate, anti-immigration sentiment toward all Latinos will affect the policing of Latino landscapers in Evanston. Flat out discriminatory practice and invited harassment and policing by non-city officials.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to note, I appreciate how organized this group is, so I gave a bit of extra time so we
Okay.
can hear all of your comments. So,
Okay.
next, well, I already, I already
sorry.
gave it
Okay.
to you.
No, that's fine.
All right.
Thank you.
And then next is Joseph St. Clair, followed by Alvaro Gomez, then Ramon Padilla.
Good evening, everyone. Obviously, you can see looking behind me, there's no electricians and no plumbers in this room. No other industry is mandated hardest in the city of Evanston other than the landscape community. Between EPA regulations, now this blower ordinance, shortages on labor, we need that blower in the spring and we need it in the fall. We know we don't like it as much as you guys don't like it, but we got to use it. In order to keep prices effective for homeowners throughout the summertime, that blower is an essential key for us to make a profit. I have lost tens of thousands of dollars in income because people that called me from Evanston, I had to tell them no. Some clients I had to let go that were legacy clients that go back 40 years, that those were my father's clients. And then if I tell employees, hey, we have to clean this house by hand, some of them have just flat out quit. When you have the equipment to be able to do the work and do it efficiently, I want you guys to drive around Evanston now. Okay? If anybody has a comparison picture, see how clean the streets were last year. Look at all the homes this year. Go over by Northwestern. Every other home with the leafy debris over there is a train wreck. Everything is a train wreck. And you mean to tell me you're going to clean that up with an electric blower with a 30-minute runtime? It's not possible. Electric power, I like it, but it's just not there yet. The ordinance is discriminatory. It is. You don't see plumbers. There's no plumbers. There's no electricians in this room. No one. Just landscapers. Okay? We're the bottom of the barrel. We work really hard. We don't always have to fight. We don't have a union. We don't have anything to fight back, to push back on this. We've taken harassment, including myself. I had one of my guys tackled on Central Street in Evanston by the Normandy Condo Association. He was running a steel electric blower at the time, but the homeowner assumed otherwise. Did the police do anything? No. It took them an hour and a half to show up. Okay? You're going to be running around making police enforce this? Really? A compromise would be in need here. I just asked the leniency of the council, give us our blowers back from April 1st to May 10th, And then October 1st to November 15th or November 20th, let us just get our job done and keep our clients happy. We know the stupid phone calls occur to you guys. You guys deal with that. So do we. We get it from the clients as well. We get it from the people that are equal. It's not saying we're not eco-friendly. We're not saying we hate the environment, but absolutely we do need this tool to get our job done. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That takes us to Alvaro Gomez, followed by Ramon Padilla, and then Alejandro Gil, I think. How are you, sir?
Buenas tardes, sí, mi nombre es Álvaro Gómez. Voy a necesitar a alguien que me traduzca porque mi inglés no es muy bueno.
I'm half and half.
Ok. Dice, mi nombre es Álvaro Gómez.
My name is Álvaro
Tengo
Gómez.
una compañía de nombre Al Gómez Landscaping.
His company's name is Al Gomez Landscaping.
Soy residente de Evanston.
I'm a resident of Evanston City.
Vivo en el 2031 Brown Avenue.
He lives on 2031 Brown Avenue.
Yo he estado trabajando en la yarda de landscaping.
He was working in the landscaping field.
Creo que desde que llegué a Evanston, llegué en 1985 y empecé a trabajar por mi cuenta desde el 88.
He got here in 1985 and he began his business in 1988.
Cuando yo vine a solicitar un permiso aquí en Evanston para trabajar, me lo negaron porque dijeron que yo no necesitaba un permiso y mayormente que no había ni sopladoras. No.
So when he came to register with Evanston, they told him he didn't need to register with Evanston and there was nothing about any type of blowers even in existence at the time. Gas powered at that.
Cuando yo me registré fue después cuando me dijeron que me encontraron pues con las sopladoras y me dijeron que qué tan grande era mi compañía.
A ver, repítalo, ¿qué? Me perdí.
Cuando se empezaron a usar las sopladoras, me dijeron que cuál era el nombre de mi compañía. Les dije que Al Gómez Landscaping. Dijo, ¿cuántos trabajadores tienes? Le digo, 3. Dice, necesitas registrarte. Vine y me registré. Desde entonces, cada año, estoy pagando mi registro, o sea, el permiso para usar todo.
So in the beginning, they asked him how many workers he had, and basically it came to the point where they pushed him to register, which he did, and he's been doing so for years since, paying his taxes to the community.
Pero después de eso, para mí fue casi como que me dieron un trancazo. Cuando
You
me
got a slap
enteré,
in the face.
cuando me enteré,
Not physically.
me enteré de que no podía usar sopladoras para nada.
This is when he realized that they canceled the blowers or the gas powered blowers. To him, it was like, this is how we started. Why take this from me now?
Y lo creí el año pasado, cuando empecé a trabajar, llegó un policía aquí en la Grand Avenue y me
Police
dijo,
call him at Grand Avenue.
me hizo así, stop, carajo. ¿Qué pasó? Yo tenía el permiso de no más. Ni un día no más, dice. Nada. Durante todo el año, nada.
He was caught off surprise when the
Entonces-
officer came, told him to stop, and that there was no more blowers allowed for the rest of the seasons, or, well, seasons to come.
Como quiera me dio un warning. O sea, me paré, no.
He got his warning, he stopped.
Pero cuando empezaron a llegar los tickets, yo no sabía ni quién me los tomaba. Hubo ocasiones que nada más llegaban gente y tomaba la foto de la troca, lo mandaba a la ciudad y la ciudad mandaba el ticket, pues claro.
So he's saying when he got his first tickets, he doesn't even know the people that came to ticket him. They started coming off and taking photos of him and his company And out of nowhere, he started receiving in the mail his tickets.
Y así como yo agarré tickets, agarraron varios de los
And just like he's
compañeros.
received it, many of us here have received them.
Entonces ahí fue como un knockout. Primero nos dieron el trancazo de cortar las sopladoras y después nos mandaron tickets a
He
lo...
said we got slapped in the face with the tickets, and now it feels like we're getting taken out with these, well.
Hay
paying
muchas
these tickets.
personas que tienen aquí más de $2,000 en tickets y no saben ni quién se los...
He's got people here that owe at least $1,200 and up on tickets, and they still don't know where these tickets came from. These are just citizens driving by and again enforcing the law, which police haven't seen, which you guys haven't seen, city officials haven't seen. If that's the case, again, back to this discriminatory.
Entonces, pues yo...
If I can ask for to start wrapping up,
Okay.
Just because of
Que
time.
si le puede, tú mencionas ahorita lo más poderoso que puedes ahorita porque ya te quieren cancelar.
Sí, estoy pidiendo que se nos haga una, ¿cómo se dice aquí? Dice, una apelación para esos tickets.
Okay. He's hoping that we can fight these tickets if you guys can give us some lenience to
Para saber quién mandó esos tickets y por qué nos cobraron sin estar usando las sopladoras.
he's wondering if we can appeal these tickets because we don't know where they're coming from. You guys obviously know, and it's just not fair. So he would like some type of appeal towards those tickets.
De esos tickets y que pues si pueden dejarnos usar las sopladoras pues por lo menos el tiempo que tú dijiste.
And he agrees with the gentleman before him if we can get some type of lenience to use our blowers as we know when we need them and then cut them off at a certain time. But again, spring and fall is when we need them the most to keep our streets clean.
Pues creo que eso es todo lo que puedo yo opinar
That's it.
por mi gente.
That's all he
Yeah,
got an opinion for the people.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I just want to note that typically we have a 2-minute time limit at committee. I wanted to give extra time because of the translation. So just so you know why I
So much. Thank you.
cut you off. Okay. So that was Alvaro. Thank you. We have Ramon Padilla, Alejandro Gil, I think, and then Peter Catalano. So Ramon.
Hello, you guys. I'm here to speak on behalf of Ramon Padilla Landscaping and everyone that you see standing here before you. These are all like my friends, peers, relatives. Like we all provide a service that's much needed, similar like garbage men's and everything else. I don't understand why we're being discriminated, why we're being being strong armed. We're being attacked by also entitled residents who feel like, they have the right to tell us what we can and can't do when we're trying to do our job so we can take care of our family like everybody else. And it's really frustrating the type of ordinance that they're trying to pass with these leaf blowers because we need them in the fall and in the springtime mainly because the electric blowers, they just create more e-waste. They're inadequate. They can't just do the type of jobs that we need to do. It's going to make us take our service a lot longer. If our service takes longer, that means we have to charge the residents more. The residents that I've had for over 40 years because I've been grandfathered in thanks to my father over there. And a lot of them like to have their fixed budgets, payments, $50, $60 a month. It's really hard to even go up $5. And right now with us being strong arm, being told that we can't do the type of service that we need with the gas, I find it really hard for us to be able to render any type of service for any type of reasonable fees. And you guys are just kind of allowing the much bigger businesses to be able to come in and charge a much larger fee than what we can do. And since the residents have no other choice where to go, they just go with them. But they feel compelled to just kind of haggle with us. And it's really frustrating because we got family members to take care of. We're just trying to provide a service. We got taxes. We mean no harms to nobody. We understand that everyone wants to be able to sleep, right? In the day or whatever, they don't want to be disturbed because some doctors, people have late night shifts and stuff. And we understand that. But we try our best to be very, discreet with the jobs. We have order with the process. We do not want to be harassed or attacked by anybody, let alone we don't even want to be having tickets coming in saying that, we have photos snapped of us by, some unknown assailant. We don't know. It's really unfair. And we're just hoping that you guys can hopefully just see, within your hearts what's the right thing to do and just allow us, the ability to just, do our job in the springtime and the fall time so that, we just don't have people harassing us the way that they are. And we can just continue building the generational wealth that we want to continue on passing down for our family and everyone else,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then thank you, Ramon, then Alejandro, and then Peter. Was it Alejandro Gil? Okay, yeah.
Good evening. I'm an employee for one of the Evanston companies here. I've been through some challenges with neighbors, some residents that believe that they're entitled to apply the laws that you guys make. So I have been in a situation where I'm doing my work and I'm just touched by someone, to gain my attention. And when I look over, I find out someone screaming at me, yelling at me because they believe that they have the power to do so. Sometimes they don't know what I'm doing with the equipment that I have on my hands. Either could be battery operator, or it could be like riding a lawnmower that could produce a loud noise. They just come and say, hey, shut it down. Where's your permit? I mean, I'm going to call the police. And I think they're wasting your resources as a city, dialing 911 with senseless calls to report a noise. I mean, you might be able to look into your public works status if you find more garbage on the streets, which could be leaves due to this ban on the blowers. And then also, I would like to mention that everybody here, it's a hard worker people. They pay taxes. They contribute to the Evanston economy. So you might think about that and just let us do what we need to provide for our families. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alejandro. The last person is Peter Catalano.
Good evening. My name is Peter and I manage V&J Landscaping and Power Equipment. We are a landscape contractor and we're also a dealer for the equipment that these guys use every day. As a supplier of the equipment, the backpack blower to a landscape contractor is an essential tool for them, especially where we get heavy leaf fall. And we all have a list and we all know where we get this heavy leaf fall, and City of Evanston is at the top of that list. In my professional opinion, the equipment simply isn't there yet. I'm in favor of going green wherever we can. However, the output of an electric blower is nowhere near that of a gasoline blower. The cost of a commercial piece of equipment is around $2,400, and that doesn't even get these guys through their day. That's maybe 2 hours, if we're lucky. The financial burden that's put on these guys is tremendous. Many of these guys have 2, 3, 4 blowers on a truck. So if you think about that and add that all up, $2,400 a piece just to get through their day. Times 2, times 3. As a landscaper, we have received an overwhelming number of phone calls from residents in Evanston asking for a price of a leaf cleanup. They are wondering why all their landscapers are raising their prices for cleanups, or they're just simply being told, no, we don't service Evanston anymore. The residents need to understand that the work is going to take significantly longer because they are not powered to do their job the way they have been for a long time. And with that said, I mean, these guys deserve to get paid for their additional time that they're spending on these properties. We strongly urge you to reconsider this ban. We ask on behalf of Evanston residents as well as small business owners who are all deeply affected by this. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Yep. All right. Thank you for the public comment. Thank you for the engagement, and thank you for being so organized. Folks can take some lessons from this group. So that concludes public comment. That brings us to items for I know we have HS2, which is the review of the Evanston police complaints. I don't see. Oh, there you are, sir. All right. We'll go ahead and start with you, and then we'll continue the agenda as.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. I'm Commander Aaron Warnick, Evanston Police Department Office of Professional Standards. I'm here tonight to ask that you accept and place on file the Evanston Police Complaints and Comments Report, and to see if you have any questions for me.
First may I have a motion to accept and place this on file? Moved by Councilmember Haircut.
I'll move HS2 review of Evanston Police Complaints and Comments Report.
Moved by Councilmember Haircut, seconded by Councilmember Burns. Are there any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, sir.
Very good. You guys have a good night. Thank you so much.
All right. So that brings us to items for discussion. So that's HS3, leaf blower ordinance update. May I have a motion? Moved by Councilmember.
I will move HS3 leaf blower ordinance update.
Moved by Councilmember Hadikatis, seconded by Councilmember
I can second.
Harris. The item has been moved and seconded. Mr. Olson, how are you?
Good. How you guys doing?
Take your time.
All right. Good evening, members of Human Services. My name is Greg Olson. I'm the Public Health Manager for the Health Department, and I'm here just to provide a update for our leaf blower ordinance operations. So the ordinance went into effect April 2023. Since that time, we've gotten noticed, essentially. Some other communities across the country have been interested more and more in the leaf blower issue. Just last week, we had conversations with jurisdictions from Minnesota and Virginia. This being a new ordinance, we are learning as we go. Internally, we're learning to smooth out our policies and procedures in order to make sure that the approach is consistent across the board. And then we're also learning externally. We're learning how this affects other businesses, which you just heard of from the small businesses. Obviously, leaf blowers is a hot topic. And you can see in this graph here, right in the middle is November 2022, which was before the leaf blower ordinance went into effect. And then, as you can guess, the big giant blue bar is November of 2023 after the ordinance went into effect. So we go from around 50 requests from 311 all the way up to around 550 in the span of 1 year from the ordinance. And then also with the number of summons to administrative adjudication, 2022, we had 37. And then 2015, 2021, there was only 17. And a lot of those are just based on the noise ordinance. And then 2023, when the ban went into effect, it more than doubled up to 81. So for our operations internally, we have staff on standby who are available after hours and weekends to respond to any sort of leaf blower request or incident. We've been collaborating with the Evanston Police Department to ensure consistency. This way, any violations that get reported to 311 get routed to our inspector, just to ensure, again, that the same consistent approach and process is followed for each one. In the beginning, April, May, when it first went into effect, we had our staff designate high areas of noncompliance throughout the city according to the 311 requests we received. And he would go out and patrol those areas as a way to be
Proactive.
proactive. Thank you. However, as you can guess, that giant blue bar with a very large amount of requests that we received, that caused an issue for his workload. So we also send a lot of reminders via our email lists, press releases, newsletters, and we've also created a number of pamphlets and postcards. This is just an example of one, front, back, English and Spanish, just kind of going over the outline of the leaf blower regulations. And what was previously mentioned, with the city offers an entrepreneur support grant. This is to assist landscapers that are Evanston based, and it provides up to $3,000. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a bit. And we also have a website with a lot of useful information, resources, and we contain a list of registered contractors, landscaping contractors within Evanston. And then one thing with the website, and I'm pretty sure it's the whole city website also, there's a feature on the very top of it that can auto-translate. Right now, last I checked, there's like 50 or so languages in there. So that can auto-translate our page to any language accessible that an individual needs. Real quick, so our 311 procedure, we receive a 311. If we are available, our staff will go out into the field to verify. If not available, we rely on the evidence that's submitted with the 311. So this could be pictures and videos. And then in that case, we would send a notice or a ticket to the business owner, depending on where it was in the process. If we receive a request that does not have any evidence, we simply inform the complainant that no enforcement can take place without an Evanston official observing the violation or having received any sort of evidence. And then we also use this as an opportunity to further education. So we send an educational letter to the property owner just to make them more aware of the requirements of the ordinance. So the first valid complaint we get is a notice of violation. The second valid complaint is a summons to administrative adjudication. And in which case, if an Evanston official didn't observe the violation, the complainant would have to fill out a affidavit in order to fill out the affidavit regarding the date and the time that they observed the violation. So some challenges that we've come across as we've been working through this new ordinance is that some landscapers are unable to be identified out in the field, so that makes enforcement a difficult route. Also, as it is right now, there's no sort of enforcement for landscapers if they are not registered with the city. And those two are kind of linked together. I'll talk about them more in just a sec. And obviously the extremely high workload during the peak season for one of our staff to do. And even though we got a whole bunch of those requests in 311, there's still an overall just lack of awareness throughout the city of what the ordinance is. So continuing education, outreach is something that we're going to be improving upon. So we discussed internally, externally, we wanted to hear voices of the landscapers who this is affecting. And so a lot of the concerns were dependent on the type of business, the business size. For the large businesses, mainly they wanted to see an even playing field. That's kind of the way they put it. They want to see all landscapers required to be registered, and they want to see an increase in fines associated with that in order to make sure that people follow the regulations. Then when it comes to small business, you've heard a lot of the comments tonight. One of the big ones is just the upfront cost of having to switch from gas to electric. We heard a figure, I think it mentioned $2,300 or so. they're expensive. I've been told just a battery alone is about $1,300. So with that entrepreneur grant, the most is $3,000. So you can get 2 batteries, and that's not nearly enough for a full day's work, because these batteries last anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, and a lot of that is dependent on the weather. If it's rainy, if it's wet, it causes more energy, more power to be used to blow everything off, and that decreases the length of time that the blower can be used. And then, as you heard also, a lot of the staff from the small businesses voiced their concern about harassment that they've received from Evanston residents while in the field, as well as receiving harassment from other Evanston landscapers. So some potential improvements would be having some sort of enforcement for landscapers who are not registered with the city. So right now, they're required to be registered as a contractor with community development, but there's just no enforcement piece attached to it. So if there was some sort of fine to tack on for a landscaper who's not registered, that would be one way to go. This potential improvement's in progress right now. It would be to create an additional field position. We've worked a few things around in our grant to free up some funding. So this position would be 90% grant funded. And then another potential would be to increase fines for the repeat offenders. And this is mainly because from 2022 to 2023, we had 118 summons to administrative adjudication. And of those 118, there were 63 distinct violators. So that means that there were multiple repeats coming back, so the fine wasn't enough to deter. And then obviously increasing the entrepreneur grant. $3,000, like I said, 2 batteries, and that's not enough to go through the workday to get their jobs done. Increased educational outreach. One idea that was thrown out was, or told to us, was giving out information about the program with the water bill as that gets sent out to residents, so that way we can ensure everyone sees it. And then lastly, I mentioned that the website can automatically translate into Spanish. But what we're hearing is not just difficulties with navigating the website in general. So we want to be able to communicate with everyone who this ordinance impacts. So during our meetings, they were put together with the help of the Evanston Latino Engagement Librarian. Her name's Mariana, and she was tremendous in helping start the dialogue and the conversation. And another thing that was thought up was putting together a document that's all in Spanish, essentially a how-to navigate the regulation document. So if you get a notice of violation, what does it mean? Who can you call? What are you entitled to? If there's evidence attached to the NOV, you'll be able to view the evidence, whether it's a picture or a video, because we want to be as transparent as possible. And then same thing applies to administrative adjudication. What does it mean? What are my options? And so just continuing to open up that route of communication between everyone who's involved is a big improvement that we're looking to do. And with that, if anyone has any questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Hericaris.
Sure. Thanks, Greg. I know I can speak a little bit just to my experience with this ordinance and my engagement with the landscaper community. I know when this first went into effect, I spoke with you and Director Ogbo. I'd asked for some stats around how many folks have received the grant. I think at the time, this was back in April, there's only four people had received the grant. One was still in process. At that point, I was like, I took it upon myself. I was like, hey, I'm going to do some outreach, post things on social media, talk to some friends of mine. I have good friends who have a landscaping company. They don't, fairly big one. They just don't do business in Evanston because it's like, I can't convince my guys to be out there with a rake, and I can't afford even, with, like 3-4 crews, converting. So spoke to people, and like, I could not get one person a grant. I talked to Director Pratt, our sustainability manager, Kara Pratt, and she was like, well, the Sustain Evanston might be an easier grant program to go through. At that point, I spoke to some of my colleagues, and I have a referral to do like a buyback program, to maybe have the city buy electric leaf blowers and have just people turn them in, because I know like the paperwork is like really tough for, a lot of folks.
Gasoline.
Gasoline, yeah.
I just wanted to we got media here.
Yeah.
Make sure you're quoted.
Oh, so I misspoke.
Yeah.
And that's something we've been discussing with staff internally. Even like myself, I have electric equipment at home. It's not as good. And so in talking to you all, it sounds like, this is something that really impacts your business. I think I would personally like us to like open up and increase our grants, but also give you guys a little bit of some leeway. I know in our discussion, what was it, 2 Fridays ago, the consensus kind of was like, I think someone said, all we need is 6 weeks, 3 weeks in the spring, 3 weeks in the fall. I know as we're making these hard changes to, accommodate for like climate action, we have to give people time, because there's, we have to move away from natural gas. We have to move towards electrification of our homes. That just doesn't happen overnight. But I think I personally would like us to, work and have a little bit of leeway here. I think, I usually don't talk this much, but I have so many thoughts. I think deputizing citizens is something we normally don't do because it can be problematic, and we've seen that. And I think that's something we have to kind of rework our methods here. I know this is some of the growing pains that we have, being one of the first communities to do this. So I'll take a break for now.
Thank you, Councilmember Heracardis. If no one else, Councilmember Burns.
And I have my hand
Oh,
up.
I'm sorry, I did not see your hand. The screen is blocked, but Councilmember Harris, and then, because I presume you were first.
Okay, thank you. And I won't speak long if I can't, but I too am concerned about our process of having residents take photos. We're dealing with a vulnerable population who doesn't understand or know, why are you taking my picture? It has many more implications. So I don't think I've actually had a resident that got into an altercation, excuse me, because they walked up on the landscaper. The landscaper didn't really understand or know what was going on. So I do think we have to relook at this as we deal with our bags and all of the things that we institute. We have to have a plan. We have to have a plan that makes sense, that is appropriate. I mentioned before, us trying to be green, it's becoming a gentrification problem as well. It really is. We're saying batteries are $3,000. That's a problem. We're chasing people out of Evanston, so we really do need to look at this. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Councilmember Burns.
First I just want to acknowledge what we heard, and I am troubled by what I heard, especially anytime we pass something, whether it's an unintended consequence or not, that leads to disputes between neighbors, that's never what we want in the city. And so, I'm sorry that that's been the experience of so many people here. And again, it's certainly not what we intended. And I kind of want to start there. So all of our meetings are recorded. If you go back and listen to the discussions that led to this decision, there was never a mention of wanting to discriminate or against anyone, right? And, the issue came down to what it always does when you're trying to implement these type of policies. It's about noise, about pollution, it's about odor, et cetera. That's what we discussed. And just like we just banned plastic bags in the city. For those who live here, you've experienced that if you shopped, and we've gotten pushback from small businesses about that as well. So we're pissing everybody off is really what I'm trying to say. And so it's not personal. It really is an effort to try to implement our climate action and resiliency plan as best we can. There was a lot of time and effort that went into developing that plan. And as committee members on this committee, but as council members, we're trying our best to implement it, being as fair as we can, and also trying to foresee as many unintended consequences as we can as well. We don't always, we can do a better job, I think, when it comes to addressing unintended consequences. This might be one of those examples. But I just want to make it clear that the intention was not to discriminate against anyone. I have some questions. I am also, I want to make sure I understand the evidence that we accept at the city. And so are we saying photographs or just videos? Because I would imagine for something like this, photos themselves may not be enough to prove that someone was using a gas-powered leaf blower.
Yeah, exactly. Videos would be preferred because, like you said, the picture is just a snapshot. We've gotten plenty of requests, 311 requests that'll be a picture of just a leaf blower sitting on the ground. And they'll say such and such was using this at this house at this time, but there's no evidence of a violation taking place. It's just a leaf blower. So those get thrown out. So our staff member, he's very particular in reviewing every single picture that comes in and video that comes in to make sure that it is indisputable. And one of the things that we discussed at our meeting was if anyone has received any sort of notice of violation or administrative adjudication or anything like that, they're entitled to see the evidence. And then they would have to just contact us and we can email it, and so they can see exactly what we're seeing and we can have that conversation to make sure that we're getting it right.
And if someone sends in evidence, any type of evidence, photograph, video, they have to also sign the affidavit and be present, or is that only if they're saying they observed something but they didn't capture it? I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, so
when we require someone to sign an affidavit and to be present at the hearing.
Yeah, so that is when Evanston official doesn't observe the violation, only the resident does. So it's just the resident stating, yes, I did observe the violation on the date and time in which I submitted the complaint. And
but they still need to submit more evidence than just they saw it,
yes,
they observed it. Okay.
Yeah, the affidavit is with the valid evidence.
With the video and the photo and all that.
Exactly.
And do they also need to be present at the hearing or no?
The
affidavit is fine. Okay.
Yeah.
And how much are the tickets again?
I believe it starts at $150 and increases $50 up to $250.
Increases automatically when something happens, or how does that work?
So the first offense would be the notice of violation. Second offense would be the administrative adjudication, which would be $150. If there's a third offense, then it's $200. Fourth offense, $250, and subsequence after is $250.
And so I'm sorry, the notice of violation, there's a cost that comes with it?
No.
There's no cost.
No.
Okay. It's only when basically a judge at the adjudication hearing can say, all right, I'm going to fine you this amount. Okay.
Correct.
I got a bunch of other questions, but I'll hold there. I guess the only other question I have before we allow my colleagues opportunity to ask questions is, so what is your thought behind whether or not the technology is there yet in terms of batteries for this industry. I'm hearing 30 minutes. I don't know, from your conversations, how long it usually takes to get through a job, but obviously it's going to take 30 minutes to do multiple jobs. But just trying to get a sense of what is the staff's position on whether or not the technology has caught up.
Well, a lot of that depends on the individual jobs that they have throughout the day, but as what we've been hearing is the same thing that I've been seeing is the battery can last anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. Depends on what kind of day it is. If it's a dry day, it'll be easier, but if it's conditions are wet, it takes a lot more power and that kind of drains it a lot quicker. And the cost of the battery is a huge hindrance because you would have to be swapping them out, charging. So it's the cost is significant, and just the duration it can stay is, it would be great if it was better. But
and one more question now, do we know? I've heard a lot that we're saying that larger companies are coming in. Are we saying they're coming in because they can charge less? Or are we saying that the clients are allowing them to charge more because of what though? That's what I'm trying to figure out. I get charging less. Like I have to pay more as somebody that we all got to comply with these regulations, which is going to create a situation where we have to buy more expensive equipment. But you would imagine everybody has to do that, small businesses and larger businesses. But I could see maybe because they're larger, they could charge their customers less while still complying with the ordinance. Or am I missing something? I need to, whoever wants, absolutely. And you can come up to the microphone here.
So today what I hear, again, I didn't mention earlier, but I just got back from vacation. I worked up this. From what I'm hearing is on the Evanston, I don't know which portal, but they are basically posting the companies that are complying with this new law. Those are majority out-of-towners and bigger companies that can afford to do such things. And what you're asking is, it's kind of a dog-eat-dog world where the smaller companies charge less, right? Coming from what is Rogers Park, Chicago areas, smaller, Skokie. They charge less and they take middle companies' business for that. And then the bigger companies charge more. And the thing is, with my experience is that, these clients in Evanston, they don't have a lot of money. So they really do pick and choose. They go window shopping, see what prices they can afford. And then, to basically make us, the smaller companies, move out of Evanston, it's just leaving the door open for these bigger companies that charge more. So then it becomes an hourly wage, an hourly charge. And again, they have the crews, they have everything. And, it gets a little tougher on us. So all we're going to do is work longer hours, work more days, and lose a lot of clients.
And I'm still trying to understand this, and this is the last question I ask is again, if I'm a customer, why am I going to pay more? Why wouldn't I just continue working with you if you're charging less? I'm missing something. Yeah, if you're going to speak, if you could come up to the microphone. Yep.
See, the problem is that most people look at like a national company as more reputable than a smaller independent company. So while we have to fight to try to prove ourselves, our worth and everything, a national company, people look at like a Best Buy or something, you're like, oh, these are more reputable, more trustworthy. So they'll pay the higher prices. But when they see someone like us who's smaller, who's independent, who's not as well known, who's not as national, right, basically, when they come to talk to us, they feel like, I can haggle with you. I feel like, you're not worth your wages in what you're asking for. They feel like, we're not worth it, even though our work is no different than a national company. There's really no difference. And we have the same overhead, the same costs, everything's the same. They're just national and they have a bigger budget or whatever the case may be. But that's the only reason why we have the issues that we have is that the residents themselves have a hard time understanding that just because they're a national company doesn't mean that they're more reputable or provide a better service than us or are more capable than us. They just think that. So that's why they'll go and pay the higher fees. But we're just as equally capable and all that. And we just have a tougher time convincing everyone of that because they feel like when they look at everyone here and they can go and ask him, $50 this, how about you, $100 this? They feel like they can, but with the national company, they already have their set prices. There's no wiggle room.
Yeah.
If it's 150, it's 150. You can't go to your other person and bargain with them. It's just what it is. But here, we can't really do that. I mean, we try our best to enforce it as best as we can amongst each other. But at the end of the day, like he was saying too, the customers just shop around. They're going to shop around because they're going to just try to find, the best, the lowest possible fee that they can afford, and there's nothing wrong with it. But like I said, if we're all just trying to, provide and we're providing the same services, there's really no difference in what we're charging compared to a national. And, if there's any type of misconception of that, maybe we should try to figure out a way of how we can, convey that to all the residents, that there's really no difference from a national to a smaller independent. There's really no difference. And maybe that might kind of also help a little bit, with the tension that's arising.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all for now.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Ravel.
Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge all the comments that have been made this evening, and thank you for sharing your experience with our ordinance, which I acknowledge is really a big challenge. And I think it's been very instructive, I think, for all of us to hear from you tonight. The ordinance is a big change, and I think we need to understand that it's going to take a while, more than just 1 year, for us to be able to get all able to comply. So I guess I have a question. So is there money hiding in your budget somewhere for a more generous grant program or a buyback program? Because I think we need to really do more to help our smaller landscaping companies get the equipment that they need. So what are our options there?
I mean, the grants that we currently have will only apply to public health functions such as operations and hiring of personnel. As far as a buyback program, unfortunately, that grant wouldn't cover it.
Or is there money in the sustainability fund?
It is something that I'll have to refer to that office to see if there's anything available, or even with the current grant that we have through community development to see if economic development to see if there are any funds available or ways in which we can increase it as well. But that's information that I don't have on my fingertips.
Well, I think it'd be very helpful to get that information, because I think we need to do a lot more to help our landscaping companies get the equipment that they need to be able to provide the service that I know they want to provide, and also to comply with our ordinance. But I do think we have a big educational effort to make in terms of our residents, so the residents understand what's involved for our landscaping companies. And Greg, you mentioned something in the water bill. It'd be really great, I think, if we had a little article in the city e-newsletter, and then all of us from the council could reprint in our ward newsletter to try to help our residents understand what's being asked of our landscaping companies, why it would be a good idea to be prepared to pay more for this service, because it's going to cost more to provide it. So those are my comments at the moment.
Thank you. Councilmember Hedekadis and Councilmember Burns have their light on to speak for a second time. As chair, I typically wait for everyone to speak first. It's really an exercise in restraint for me. So I'm going to speak briefly, and then we'll go around to other folks. But one, I really appreciate the folks for coming out today. I don't think it was acknowledged, but, folks up here, I think Councilmember Burns, at one point, did you own a landscaping? Did you do landscape? Councilmember Burns did landscaping. I've worked in the service industry before with construction. I grew up in foster care with a Latino family who owned a maid service. And so I've seen firsthand how hard it is to work on the ground level and take care of our communities and provide for families. So I get it. And I understand that this is a difficult ordinance. I also am someone who firmly believes in environmental in sustainability and making sure that our communities are clean. But I, contrary to that, I also think that the city, there are some really interesting points. There are concerns around, the lithium batteries. And, when you think about it, are the lithium batteries better than gas-powered machines? For people who live here, sure. It does mean that the air here is cleaner, but it means that, somewhere in Africa, there are children that are having to mine cobalt and lithium and all of these precious metals that are used to make the battery. It means that when these batteries are disposed, and too often, how many of us are actually disposing our cell phones properly? Sometimes we're not. And these other batteries, it means that the lithium is leaking into our water streams and causing harm elsewhere or potentially here. And so, and then also, if the lithium batteries aren't powered by clean renewable energy, then you get into another layer of issue because it's we're using fossil fuels to create the energy for the batteries. So it's a difficult choice. I've remained fairly consistent on this for folks who are aware. I'm really against the use of cars, and some folks say, well, we'll get more people to buy electric vehicles. Well, that's actually not the solution, and quite frankly, I don't know if the solution here is to switch over to the e-devices, the electronic devices here. But in the meantime, as we wait for batteries to meet higher standards, to be able to hold a charge for longer, I do think there has to be a middle ground. That middle ground could be, and not only to meet higher standards, but also to come down in price so they're more affordable and they don't price folks out. And so I do think what I'm hearing, I really appreciate Councilmember Hedekades for taking leadership on this issue. I agree that it makes sense for the city to increase the funds that we have available to help folks switch over to this new technology. I presume the answer, and I appreciate Councilmember Ravel for trying to identify where those funds could come from. I think the answer is going to be from Director Ogbo's office, that the funds aren't available in your office because we have a lot of pressures. And I imagine that when we go over to the sustainability department or bureau, whatever department, that there will not be the funds in their budget to fully fund this program. And so what I'd imagine this committee is going to have to do is, if we want to do this, we got to get a cost estimate and understand how many businesses are out there and what this will cost. But I think if we want to provide assistance, we're going to have to be prepared to look at our general fund excess reserves, which I think at this point are hovering around 30 some odd million. So I think the money is there if this is a priority for us, and if we want to stick with our CARP goals, but also ensure that folks in our community continue to have opportunities to provide for themselves. I do want to go into just a few things quickly. I really appreciate Councilmember Burns's questions about the evidence. That was something that stuck out to me. I do think the evidentiary standard needs to be potentially a bit higher. And so, Council Ruggie, can you discuss? Turn my mic off. I understand that these are administrative hearings and thereby do not follow the same evidentiary standards that a traditional courtroom would follow. But can you talk a bit about the evidentiary standard in a courtroom? Would a video from a stranger be acceptable in a courtroom?
Thank you, Chair Reed. Alex Ruggie, Interim Corporation Counsel. So a video is acceptable evidence in a courtroom if certain criteria are met. So any evidence that's going to be presented to a court has to be basically identified and confirmed for its authenticity. So when you're moving to enter a video, you would have to have the person who took the video present to testify to its authenticity, to the fact that it's a true and accurate representation of what occurred, what date it occurred, who took the video, how it was stored, and how it's being entered into the court. So there are extensive steps you have to take to enter that video into evidence in a traditional criminal courtroom. Administrative adjudication, like you mentioned, does not necessarily follow the traditional rules of evidence that a courtroom is required. And Also, the level of evidence required is much less than a criminal court. So here it's more likely than not that the violation occurred as opposed to beyond a reasonable doubt as in a criminal courtroom.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. I understand the difference between the administrative hearing and a courtroom, but I would imagine that for folks out in the audience, these tickets are potentially taking away their livelihood in the way that a criminal proceeding possibly could. One thing that I'd like to see here is us change the evidentiary standard for this. I don't think, to points that were made earlier, that we should be encouraging residents essentially to be deputies of the city and go out and try to enforce the leaf blower ordinance. And I do think if we reined in the evidence that we allow in these cases, that would essentially stop residents from engaging in the behavior. I also, another thought that came to mind is, in the past, we have, the council has implemented either, for example, a few years ago, I think this was in 2018, 2019, the council allowed folks who had parking tickets. We changed our policy on how many tickets you needed to get before the city would put a boot on your vehicle, I think it was, and or even send your license off to be suspended by the state for non-payment of tickets. And I think we went from I think 10 tickets down to 5 or something. We moved down in order to try to get people to comply with paying their tickets. But when we did that, the council at the time implemented a policy where there was a ticket forgiveness. I think you paid maybe one of the tickets and you'd be forgiven for all of the rest that were accrued up until that point. And there was maybe even a grace period that was built in as well. And I think that given the difficulties here and given, some of even the math on the science about the battery packs versus the gas and the difficulty here, that to me, it might make sense to look at a similar policy where we allow folks to, if you've racked up multiple tickets with this, you pay one and then the rest are forgiven. And then we potentially look at a grace period to get this on track. So I would be supportive of that, as well as providing additional funds to make this happen. And then the biggest request that I'm hearing from folks is that folks are really requesting a 3-week period in fall, a 3-week period in spring, to be able to use the gas blowers. I personally need to know more about that and what the rationale for those 3-week periods are. I'm not going to ask right now. I'm going to move on to some other colleagues, but I do want that question answered, because again, like I said, I am committed to our CARB goals. I'm committed to ensuring that folks who are working in our community are not working in conditions that are, the gas blowers do let off emissions and carcinogenic particulates that are harmful to the user and folks nearby. And so I really would need to dig in and understand the reasoning for the 3-week periods on either end and whether there's a way to work around that or, but I will pause there. Director Ogbo, then Councilmember Hedekadis, Burns, and then Ravel.
Okay. Increase in the grant will only benefit Evanston businesses. It does not extend to businesses that are established in other jurisdictions. So I just wanted to make that note.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Councilmember Hedekadis.
Sure. One of the things, I think, we touched on CARP a little bit. It is one of our biggest goals. I had, unfortunately, our sustainability manager, Kara Pratt, is out on vacation or away from work right now. But I asked the rest of the staff if we had any numbers around the carbon footprint caused by using gas leaf blowers here in Evanston, and they said they did not have an accurate count. I know that when we looked at the last report, that was they weren't on the pie chart. It was the one big thing is the natural gas. Really, is that's probably the most impactful. One thing I think, and Councilmember Reed touched upon this. When we have any sort of like my personal, and I think the city's, kind of stance on tickets. When we're trying to change behavior, like me personally, I don't think anything should ever be punitive. We shouldn't be issuing these tickets to put you folks out of business. And unfortunately, from what I've heard from speaking with a lot of you, there are some of the bigger businesses are using this as kind of a lever to kind of monopolize business. I won't mention names, but some business owner is actually personally going around or sending his employees to take pictures and videos. And we have to figure out some way in our enforcement to not allow that to happen. I'll leave that for now.
Thank you, Councilmember Burns.
No, I'm good. I want to make sure if I can. Yeah, correct. Thank you, Mr. Olson. So the staff person we have does not work during the day, only on weekends and after hours. I just want to.
No, he's 5 days a week as well.
Okay.
But he's also on call during the weekend hours.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. But if something happens during the day, he could be dispatched to that area immediately.
Yeah.
Essentially. Okay. And then with the battery packs, I mean, let's take a 5-hour day. Are we literally saying even if we use the hour that you need 5 batteries to get through the day? And it goes up the more hours or the more people? I mean, is that
would be
the way to understand this?
Yes.
That's a lot of batteries.
It is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of batteries too, is the thing. It's like logistically, operationally, how do you make it work? Unless you find a way to. Well, yeah, the charging I was thinking too, but it's, maybe somebody has figured out how to charge it in the car, which would be great. I'm thinking you're going back to the office and you have batteries there and then you're swapping out. I mean. Yeah. Yeah. And if you could come up.
Yeah, because folks online can't hear you.
Yeah. No, you're good.
I understand that everyone wants to be more eco-friendly and stuff, but just the tech is just not there right now. All around the board, it's just not there. We're not really trying to cause any problems. We just want to be able to provide the public service that we can, without being harassed or bothered or being told that, we can't use the gas blowers because it's wrong or whatever. There's nothing wrong with it, really. We're just using it briefly for the time that we need to. And we just need to use them for about maybe 3 to 4 weeks. And that's it. We're good. Just in the spring and the fall. And
so just to go on that real quick, and I think everybody would understand this. Imagine you wanted to stop something from happening for a certain reason. And in this case, noise, pollution, odor, et cetera. You're not going to allow the folks doing it an opportunity to do it during their peak season. Like the whole point is to not have it happen. And so that's why when you say, hey, just let us do it during this time period, we're trying to prevent that from happening from a gas powered standpoint. So I just want to make sure we're all aligned on that. We're not discriminating against the people in here, but we have identified this leaf blower as something that we want to regulate for reasons that we've discussed and are further described in the ordinance likely itself. So I just want to make sure we're aligned on that, which is why I'm trying to scrutinize as much as I can how this works operationally. Because if I can't get my mind around that, then I'm more open to seeing if there's ways, to figure out what we can do. Because we're assuming that even if we provide grants, that this is operationally feasible right now. Like that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around. So I guess aside from the batteries, what happens when you're around a single family home? I'm going to ask a dumb question, but I want to get this out. Why are we not plugging into, and I know the answer to this from my standpoint, but I want to hear from y'all. Why are you not plugging into, for a single family home, plugging into their home?
You can't, because
I want to get that out there.
A lot of times, most of the time, the cord itself isn't long enough to cover the entire house from the alleys all the way to the front, because everyone wants to have their entire property line cleaned from all the way to the alley, all the way to the street. They don't want to see any leaves anywhere. So you can't really be, connecting a cord that only goes maybe 10 feet, 20 feet, and only goes half one side of the house, but doesn't cover the whole perimeter. You can't really do that. And it's really unethical to try to find places where you can, put the cord, because not every house is built the same way that has an outlet as well outside. So I understand what you guys would prefer us to do, but honestly, just the electric route or using even the cords themselves, there's no, what's the word I'm looking for? There's no practical way for us to be able to operate with them in those capacities. That's why we prefer using the gas powered blowers, because they give us the freedom to be able to go for long, extended periods of time. If a property takes between 2 to maybe 4 hours, depending on how many leaves fall, we need that time, and a gas powered blower gives you that time, as well as the strength, the power, the force to be able to lift these mounds of leaves and dirt and all these things. An electric blower won't give you that within, even like he said, like an hour. It's gonna phase out, and then it's gonna wear down. And after a month, it's not even gonna be, half of what it was when it was first brand new, right? So you're gonna have to go through the hassle of having backup batteries on top of the batteries that you can't afford. It's compounding effects. It's really compounding if you look at it. And just from, our standpoint, it's really difficult. It's unethical. It's tough. It's just really tough,
Councilman Burns has the floor.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
if he wants to.
You asked earlier regarding how long it takes to charge a battery. Well, it takes 5 minutes is nothing, up to an hour sometimes. And where do you plug it in? They have this power station that you could put in your trailer, which takes away the gas cans that you were using. But the $10,000 to $12,000 for one of those, and you have to charge it overnight, so that you can charge 5, 6, 7, 8 batteries in the course of the day as we're working. So on a truck, we have 2, 3, 4 blowers, depending on the size of the job. Residential home is smaller, bigger, like an apartment building or something. It takes more time to do. So now we have 3, 4 blowers running at the same time. Now, when it's wet, like you had mentioned, it takes longer because it's heavy. So the power goes out quicker. So now you have to have more. If you take the batteries away, you have to work more labor. So instead of being there an hour and a half, let's say, in a job, now you're going to 6 hours to do the same job. That means more labor hours. That's what you're asking. Why is the prices going up? Because you have to pay more labor. Big company or not, they can come in and outfit the entire crew and pay $10,000 for batteries, for the charger. It's around $25,000 per trailer to put that in to comply to what you guys are wanting. So that's why the big companies can monopolize, because they have these major contracts. To them, it's nothing to buy all this stuff. For us, it is, because I'm not going to spend $25,000 per truck just for a few batteries. And it doesn't make sense. And not just that, but we don't have facilities, parking. Where I park my trucks, I rent the yard space. So what happens is I don't have electricity to bring. Now you need a big charger, because you blow the fuses. You have to cut holes into the trailer, because the thing is in the trailer, to plug it into. So who's going to be there to monitor it overnight? Who's plugging and unplugging? You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. Financially, we're not there yet. And batteries don't have the strength to do what the gas power do. And you were asked a question regarding spring and fall. It's because we have the cleanups. More leaves in the spring. We do power raking. There's other different things that we do. So you need those machines. It's more generally wet in the spring and the fall compared to the middle of the summer. So we need that 3 weeks or a month per spring or fall to be able to use the gas power to get jobs done quicker. That's why otherwise we'd have to charge 3, 4 times our price. So if a job is $50, now it's going to $250 because you got to pay the labor, So that's why we need the extra time in the spring and fall, until the batteries catch there. Otherwise, impossible to do work in the city of Evanston. You know what I mean?
And I just want to make sure, because there was a few different things you talked about. Sure. So I want to understand how you're charging it. I think you mentioned a trailer.
Yes.
So could you walk through that again? Are you saying you're charging while you're moving around, or are you charging at the headquarters, at the office?
Currently, I don't have that set up, which I mentioned. It's a massive battery pack that you charge overnight. That's $12,000, $15,000 to put in your trailer. So you can put a battery and charge it every 10 minutes. You can charge a battery because it goes quicker, because you have this power pack. If you were to try to put it in the residential home, first of all, probably none of our customers, I get calls where you guys are, plugging into my electricity, going to pop the fuse. What if a house catches on fire because of it? So not just that, but it's not this big charger where that battery doesn't charge that quickly. It may take an hour and a half to charge that battery. So the guys will sit around so I can charge batteries. So the labor goes up regardless because they're sitting around not doing anything, you know? So according to the battery aspect, you know?
Yeah.
It takes time, and we can't charge at people's houses. Nobody wants us on their property to charge. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to mix it up. I know we got one more light. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councilmember Ravel. If a council member wants to take testimony, we'll do that. Councilmember Ravel.
Well, there's another audience of landscaping companies who aren't here tonight, and I think I know, you know who I'm talking about. But they have already invested a lot of money. They have more resources to be able to do that, and they have invested significantly in order to comply with the ordinance. So I think we'd have a major outcry from those companies if we were to basically take a step back from the ordinance and say that it didn't apply for 3 weeks in the spring and the summer. So, and they've
If I can,
they have increased their prices in order to both help pay for the equipment, but also because of the extra time.
Excuse me, if I can just ask for folks not to interrupt the council members unless they.
So somehow we have to be able to help everyone move forward on this ordinance, and which is why I think the real key is coming up with some significant funding. Maybe, I mean, we've got money now from Northwestern in our Climate Action Fund, right? So maybe that's where we could find some money. But because I think better, rather than backtracking and saying, well, for 3 weeks in the spring and the fall, we can still use our gas-powered blowers. I think that would be a mistake. It'd be better to continue to focus on helping everyone move forward with the ordinance.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Ravel. I'll go ahead if you want to take 30 seconds.
All the gas-powered backpack blowers meet at the federal EPA level 2, level 3, and level 4 criteria for pollution. Okay, that's actually very well. Most of these guys, all the synthetic fuels that are mixed together, two-cycle equipment, are all synthetic. Illinois typically has the worst fuel quality in the country. Fact, the worst fuel quality in the Midwest, and the highest taxes on that fuel. Okay, we're all struggling. We're all working here. We need those blowers in the spring. We ask of you. We need those blowers in the fall. That blue number up there, that was up there earlier today about all the complaints to 311. Okay, let's figure out something here. Common sense. Okay, when they took that data and they put all that data together, how many of these people were working from home that normally wouldn't have complained because they had an office job to go to? How many of them? Half? More than half? Okay. A couple of untrained companies out there running the blower when they shouldn't supposed to, or not having the correct training through an association. That's a probability. But let's take a look at those numbers pre-pandemic versus those numbers today before we actually make a decision on absolutely canceling out the blowers and then penalizing and criminalizing guys just for wanting to work and pay taxes and earn a living.
Thank you. And to be clear, to be clear, we're not making a decision today on whether or not to ban the gas blowers. We have made that decision already. That decision was made about a year ago. But the decision that I think is before us, and then Councilman Burns, I know you want to say something, so I'll just go to you, but is how to improve the current ordinance and how to improve the current landscape for you all to make sure that folks who are Evanston residents, folks who are working in Evanston, are able to continue to do that and make a living. Councilmember Burns.
I know just personally, I would appreciate understanding kind of what the costs are, like the full costs are, and to consider kind of all facets of a landscaping operation. We've kind of talked through some of that today, but I think it's important for us to understand what the real burden is. And I don't think it's just $3,000 for the equipment and $1,300. I don't think it's just the cost of the equipment. We've discussed some things today that that sheds light on what the operational difficulties are. And I'd like us all, myself, my colleagues, but also the community that will be following this issue to understand what all the true costs are. I also am interested in what we can do from an administrative hearing standpoint. I think even for some noise violations, and I don't know if this was being enforced properly, if it's not a requirement and it's more of a practice, but I think we sometimes require that people who report noise violations have had to be present at the hearing. I think we've done that before. I know the complaint, but I think even a step further, we've required at some point, maybe improperly, that they actually attend the hearing. I am interested in understanding more about how that may play out, and if we do it in one area, I know it would make sense to look at other areas too, so things could, we always want to be careful when we may start to set precedent or create certain expectations that we're not willing to meet. But I would be interested in exploring that a bit. And I think that's it. This is, as Councilmember Reed said, we've already passed this ordinance. So this isn't a situation where we're considering making these changes. We've already made the changes, and everybody here is kind of experiencing, I would say, the unintended consequences from a policy that is already passed. And so we're trying to figure out, does it make sense to eliminate it altogether, or to make certain tweaks so that we can better represent you folks? So just to make that clear, this ordinance is already passed. That's kind of all I have right now. I know, Councilmember Hedekaz, you have a referral underway. I think the last thing I want to say is I've always said from the beginning of at least this council's discussion on CARP, and this is consistent with what we've heard for a while now, it's going to take subsidies and technical support to implement our CARP plan. We're not going to do this at no cost.
Climate Action Resiliency Plan.
And I say that every time we talk about CARP, and I'm saying it today. We're going to have to figure out costs. Every time we implement something, there's going to be a cost to some stakeholder group. Today it's the landscaping community. Tomorrow will be another group. So we have to figure out how to provide support for people that are impacted by these policies, which is why, again, I want to understand what those true costs are.
Thank you. Councilmember Hedekaz.
I was just going to add that I just urge people that are watching to please value people's hard work. Just because someone has a big fancy truck and a big fancy trailer with a flashy paint job does not mean they deserve more money than these folks sitting here. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm curious, when maybe someone can just shout it out, or Mr. Olson, when does the season start for the March 15th? March 15th, is that what I heard? Yeah, okay. Yep. Okay. So we're looking at a March 15th start date for the season. This committee meets once a month, and for any changes that we would make would have to come to this committee, then go to council. So it seems as though it is. I think there are two options. I think certainly this committee could pass at our next meeting and very quickly move to council a resolution that changes, temporarily changes the enforcement landscape, if that's what we want to do. So that's a possibility to, create through resolution, a temporary change in the landscape, whatever that change may be, in the landscape. And then the committee, ultimately, if we want to make a permanent change in the ordinance and not just a temporary enforcement change, would have to pass an ordinance. And that would take likely a number of readings here and then at least 2 readings at council, which could take a few months, which would certainly bring us in to, well into, at least a month or 2 into the season. So with that in mind, as not to just drop the ball here and have a fancy discussion with no action, I'd like to know what the committee would like to do. Would we like to look toward a temporary resolution to change the enforcement regime? Councilmember Hedekaz. Well, I think that's the discussion we'll have to have now.
I think this is for discussion. So I think when we've done this in the past, just so that staff is clear on the direction coming from the committee, we could take a straw poll on a suggestion of where we want to go with enforcement. And I will throw out, I think if we had any other business community show up with this many people, we would make a concession. That this has happened. This happens all the time, and like we are not experts in every single industry, so we have to listen to who's actually doing the work. And when we make these changes, if it's something problematic, people show up. I think it's completely reasonable that for this next calendar year, that we allow for three weeks in the beginning, three weeks at the end, six total in the beginning and the end. And then we can discuss that further, maybe take that to council. But I'd like to hear what everyone else's thoughts on that would be.
Thank you. Is that are you making a motion or are you holding off on the motion until?
Because this isn't really a referral.
What I would say,
staff's asking for direction. So I what
I would say is that
Council Ruggie, what's the proper way to do this going forward?
Well, if I can, as chair of the committee, I'll say that I would, I procedurally think that if we are going to ask staff to bring back a resolution directing a change in enforcement to one of our existing ordinances, there should be a motion from this committee requesting that for our next meeting. But Councilor Ruggie, if you'd like, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with that.
I know that Director Ogbo, you flipped your light on.
The change in enforcement will pertain primarily to the fine structure. The way in which we administer enforcement is pretty much internally based. I've heard a number of dialogues that we've had in regards to the evidence that we receive and whether that needs to be edited or revised. So that's an internal policy that we have applied through a number of our environmental health programs. So it doesn't just pertain to this particular ordinance, but other ordinances as well, where individuals are submitting affidavits. So in essence, what I'm saying is if there are any enforcement activities that need to be changed based on the ordinance, to look at the fine structure. But as far as the internal policies, it is something that we have applied throughout a number of our programs. So.
I feel like I don't understand exactly what.
So in essence, what I'm saying is when it comes to the enforcement, it is the fine structure based on this ordinance. The fine structure is based on the first offense all the way to the fifth or subsequent offenses, which ranges from $0 to $250. When it comes to the way in which we administer administrative adjudication, that is an internal policy that is not indicated in the ordinance.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So your suggestion is for us to move forward. What exactly? If we is that we would make an amendment to.
So what I'm seeking here is a clear direction as to how we enforce it. The way that we are enforcing it is based on evidence that is provided to us. We review the evidence, then we will proceed to administrative adjudication. I also heard maybe there will be a system created whereby a number of tickets are thrown out. Right. So that's where I'm trying to understand what the direction here is.
Thank you. And I think just again procedurally and to make this something that is lawful, there's an ordinance that is on the books that is the law of the city. A resolution that would put a pause on that ordinance wouldn't undo the ordinance. It would essentially say that this is our lowest enforcement priority. We have limited resources very clearly within the health department and the police department, and we are not going to use our limited resources at this time to enforce the law for a period of time. I don't know if that period of time is a year, but I think that would procedurally be what the resolution would essentially say. Does that sound about right to you, Councilor Ruggett? Yeah. And then also, I do think as a part of that with I think if we are going to go down that route that Councilmember Herrera suggested, I do think it should be coupled with some kind of forgiveness of existing fines in a limited fashion. I'm sorry, I lost track of lights. I think Councilmember Herrera was first, or was it Ravel? Okay, Councilmember Ravel, go ahead. Then Herrera, then Burns.
Right. Well, Councilmember Herrera was not on the council, I think, when we approved this ordinance, so you missed the dozens of residents who came clamoring for us to ban gas-powered leaf blowers. So I really we'll have a chamber full of those residents here next week next meeting. So I really don't think we should go backwards on the ordinance. We should focus on making sure we help everyone comply with it.
Again, if I can ask for order in the chamber, Councilmember Herrera, then Burns. Oh, Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, I think, personally, I need just more information. The information that I requested is information I need to figure out, what I would like to see happen here. I do think this should come back. Whether it comes back, I don't know if we're ready to vote on anything yet or to even give direction to work on anything. I think we just need more time on this. As always, I'm always happy to hold a special meeting to discuss something as important as this, although I know, we, as council members, we sit on a lot of committees as we're on today, but we also have council meetings and other things that are going on. But I'm always happy to set aside time for issues like this. But I would just need more information before I could support something. I would, again, because the purpose is always compliance. It's the penalties and the fines are just trying to incentivize people to do the thing that's on the books. But because what we really want to see is compliance, I would be happy to talk about something we can do with the fines. I don't know if it's, I don't know what that looks like, if it's forgiveness or what it looks like. But if creating some burden now, short of a moratorium on this particular ordinance or allowing, the leaf blowers to be used during a certain period, I would be open to some type of forgiveness or waiver or something while we work out what to do here. But I need more information, Yeah. And honestly, I could get information because I'm very concerned about how this works operationally. Honestly, I think it's a situation where it's possible that only the large companies could afford to do this. And if that's the case, we need to know that. We need to know it, acknowledge it, and determine whether or not that's what we want to see for this industry. And so that's why I've really centered my questions around what are the true costs, operational costs, if someone even wanted to comply with this ordinance. Working 5 to 10 hour days, different trucks, 2 or 3 people or more, working at one time. I really need that information to know where we go from here.
Thank you. Councilmember Herrera is next, but, I'm sorry, Councilmember Harris. Thank you.
I'm trying to, there we go. Thank you so much. I agree with Councilmember Burns. There's some information that we really need to know to make really good decisions. But I'm also on the side with Councilmember Herrera. I know we came back to the bag ban that Councilmember Herrera and I walked into a lot of things happening. And we did make some revisions because some of the businesses weren't ready. They had stock already. They had these, bags in their inventory. And the turnaround, maybe there was a longer, turnaround with this. But I do think there has to be considerations made. What those are, I'm unclear at the time, but we really need to look at this and the unintended consequences that have happened because of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Councilmember Harris. I'm going to go to Councilmember Herdicadis, but I do want to interject here quickly. To Councilmember Harris's point there, we made concessions around the bag tax. We made concessions around Fair Work Week. We've made concessions around minimum wage. And it doesn't take, 50 or more, however many people in this room to show up. In fact, a lot of times other business owners can just send us a letter signed by 5 people and we'll change a whole ordinance. So I do think that, given the demographic, the income demographic of folks that are asking for this change, I am partial to it. I don't know about a year waiving the enforcement of this, but I do think folks are asking for 3 weeks in the spring and 3 weeks in fall. Hold on, I hear. All right. I would be open to a temporary pause for, I'm going to say it again, so don't interrupt me, but 3 weeks, 3 or 6 weeks, but I think 3 weeks in the spring. That'll give us time between the spring and fall to figure out the funding for some program, whether it's from thank you for that, the Northwestern money for CARP or another source. I think that'll give us time to work on this, figure it out. Still have the ordinance in place, hopefully not encourage folks to, who support the ordinance to come up and protest if it's just a small period at the beginning to help us get this in order. And so that would be my recommendation for moving forward. Councilman Herdicadis, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement that if we can do a short moratorium here at the front end, and we need some more information. I know that I really was appreciative of staff meeting with a lot of you folks and getting people registered that weren't previously registered. I think it'd help us crunch the numbers to find out how many small companies there are in Evanston and what the needs are. And so I think it's twofold. We don't want to put you guys out of business. We want to help you guys succeed. I know a lot of people who, this is like a multi-generational wealth for you all. You're I met people who were there with their dad. Yeah, my dad started this company and I took it over. And y'all are longtime Evanstonians. So I think everyone up here wants to help you guys out. But I think I'm willing to be available as much as possible to get your information and help figure out a solution to this. But I think I would personally like to see a small moratorium on the front end so that we can kind of get our ducks in a row and figure out how to solve this problem permanently.
Thank you, Councilmember Herdicadis. Councilmember Burns.
So, you're saying that can be done by a resolution?
Correct.
Okay. Again, if the goal here, we're not going to vote on anything tonight. And so we're not going to hold a special meeting. We're going to consider this at the next Human Services Committee meeting, which is
March.
What date?
First week of March.
It will be the first Monday in March.
March 4th is what Council Ruggie said.
Yeah. So, if
And then we have a council meeting on March 12th. No, that's February 12th. Never mind. But we'll have one very close before the 15th.
So if we want to draft a resolution, and I don't know if it would say 3 to 6, and it wouldn't require a referrals committee if doesn't require ordinance change, which you're saying it's a resolution.
It's a resolution changing enforcement priority.
I don't, other than, the pushback that we'll get from doing it from people who, advocated for this to be in place. I don't see any harm in having a resolution available to consider at our next meeting. I think what I'm just being clear on is I'm not ready to make any decision as it relates to this until I get the information I need, but I'm always willing to have a discussion. And just from a process standpoint, we're not going to discuss it until the next meeting anyway. So along with the information that I've requested, if in addition to that, we also have a resolution to consider that will put either a moratorium in place or adding a period where we allow gas powered leaf blowers, I would be fine with that. Again, it's all the same to me. Either way, I get the information I need and we have a resolution to consider. We may vote it up, may vote it down, but it doesn't hurt for it to be available.
Thank you. Then with that, if I can have if I first can have a motion for the council member can choose the duration.
I will make a motion to have a 3-week moratorium at the beginning of the spring while we figure out the grant program and what we can do to help our landscaping business owners.
I will second that, but I think moratorium is I think maybe more the proper term would be to decrease the enforcement priority. To Attorney Ruggie, does it matter, moratorium or enforcement priority?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can just the resolution can specify no enforcement during that period.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Okay. Did I second that, or is there a second? Is there a second? That's okay. A second to that. I second that. I would encourage my colleagues to vote for that, for this brief moratorium. I will say, while I am partial to hearing out the concerns, I still need to understand. I don't think I'm going to get to a place where I think we need to remove this ordinance. I think where I'm going to get to is, and where I pretty much am already, is we need to provide funding to help folks make the transition. I also think that we need to make sure that the program is wide enough to, I mean, I don't know how many business owners are here, but how many of you are not Evanston-based businesses? And so, Skokie, right? And so there's a number of folks who wouldn't be eligible very likely under, almost any criteria. Unless, unless we look at the criteria, and, for me, it would have to be that you're employing a certain number of people that are Evanston residents, something for us to justify giving our taxpayer money to folks who have businesses in Skokie or somewhere else. I see Director Ogbo, you flipped your light on.
Perhaps this is a question for our corporate counsel, but based on the information that I received, the moratorium would be the beginning of the spring. If we can specify what that means by the beginning of the spring, are we talking?
I think from March 15th, 3 weeks on from there. So whatever that is.
Okay.
Chair Reed, just looking at the calendar, March 15th is a Friday, so maybe we'd go March 18th and 3 Mondays after that.
Sure. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so there's a motion, a second. We're clear on what the motion is. I'm going to do a roll call vote. Councilmember Hericades.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel.
No.
Myself, aye. The ayes have it. So we will anticipate a resolution creating a temporary hold on enforcement of this ordinance at our March 4th meeting. I also, just to be clear, with what I'm looking for is potentially, I think we should move quick on trying to identify funding sources so we can get our ordinance back in place and enforce it. So I think if staff can bring us some data on potential funding sources, and if there's a way that we can get a cost estimate. Yeah. So then Greg, I think, has contact with you. So, but a cost estimate for the number of businesses that would potentially be eligible, maybe looking at some of the eligibility criteria that we have with other programs to make this feasible. All right. Am I missing anything? I know. Yeah, sure. You go ahead.
Okay, responding outfitting trucks and trailers with electrical equipment, full brand new crew, brand new truck, you're at the height end of $250,000. Now let's do the math here. Average resident, small, medium-sized house in Evanston, $50 a week. How many lawns do we have to cut with plus the 3 employees on top of paying that second mortgage, the $250,000? How many lawns do we got to cut to pay for that in return on investment? How many? Okay, and how long does the workday got to be?
Well, that's why I want to get true
Old
costs.
trucks,
Yeah.
the old
Because
trucks,
just so
can't
you know,
convert them.
what we have in our packet, which I think is a good first step, is like, what is the cost of an average, electric power leaf blower?
Seabird is a very large
and
company.
that's part of the story, but this story is much bigger than that. And we're talking about it now. We're talking about outfitting trailers because, you're going to want to charge on the road and not have to go back and forth to your
And
headquarters.
not to mention the batteries in the trucks. I've talked to several guys over at Greenwise
Yeah.
that try to keep up with the green movement and plugging in everything. They're putting brand new batteries in their trucks probably once every 2 to 3 months because the batteries are they're done. And then you got disposal of those batteries, recycling of those batteries, and so on. Goes on and so on. These batteries, there's no process for these larger batteries, for these backpack blower units, for disposal of these batteries. They can't go to a landfill. It's illegal. You can get a lot of trouble for that. EPA catches you. The fine's up to $2,500 to sky's the limit. Depends on how the guy in the EPA is feeling that day.
Yeah.
You could get slammed pretty hard if you get caught with
And those are costs too that, we should consider as well. So as much as we can, kind of from start to finish of the life of a battery on one of these leaf blowers, the costs, how do you recycle them, et
inverters.
cetera?
There's inverters that need to be put in. There's installation process. Plus, if it rains that day, that electric equipment is useless. The truck just sits. So there's no return on investment. So if we get a rainy season, let's say this El Nino shuts off, where we've having these Bahamas winters that we've been having right now, the last 2. Okay, let's say we get 10, 15 days of rain. Then what? Those 3 weeks in the spring, they're gone. Then what? Then we're raking wet leaves. We got angry customers. We got grass all over the neighborhood. We're just making a mess. Okay, our reputation goes from here to here in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, next thing you know, all it takes is a couple bad reviews and somebody jump on Angie's list because they're PO'd. Okay, that's a problem too. Then you get people love the environment. We do everything we can. This group right here, we recycle more grass than anybody. Okay, let me be honest with you for a second. There's people in your town that move from town to town in town just to inflict their agenda. They don't actually ridiculously care about anyone or care about what that's in their brain. That's what they do. Because a lot of this stuff started in Wilmette, good 10, 15 years ago. Everything has been fine in Wilmette with spring blowers in the spring and blowers in the fall. We've had no issues. Only Evanston. So,
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. With nothing else before the committee, Councilman Burns, were you
I
done
was
with
going to
your
say,
time?
if you
Go
want to
ahead.
just summarize one more time, kind of what the action we took and how people can follow along with all of this.
Yeah. Well, the action that we took was we voted to bring back a resolution that will decrease the enforcement priority and eliminate enforcement of the leaf blower ordinance for the first 3 weeks of the season, which will start the first Monday of the season, going 3 weeks after that. And then we will seek more information on funding, potential funding sources to help companies outfit their operations, as well as additional data from that council members are seeking. All right, thank you very much. This concludes the meeting of the. Oh, I'm sorry. There's one item. Folks may still dismiss, but there's one item that I wanted to raise. This committee voted to provide funding for homelessness prevention a few months ago that moved on to council but never appeared on a council agenda. I would still like to see that on the council agenda. I do know that, for example, if I can ask just folks, we'll pause for 30 seconds. All right. Okay. So I understand that Connections is may be open to having their funding request held, but District 65, I think, still desperately needs the assistance that was requested there. I think we can take more time with the connections portion, but we've seen that homelessness has gone up in the district. Their resources have gone down in the district. I think there already is an existing partnership between the district and the city. I think this will allow the district to take actually some of the weight off of our health department and handle this on their own. So I'd like to see the $200,000 request for District 65 move forward, and then I'd like this committee to come back and review the rest of the request for connections or some other entity that can help us with the encampments that have popped up over the city. The one on Howard, I appreciate our staff for going out and addressing it, but it pops back up every so often, and we have not dealt with the issue. And there are resources that I feel that we're leaving on the table there, such as Impact Behavioral Health offering 30 spots for free to the city to help folks with drug treatment. We can't leave that kind of those resources on the table. And so I'd like to see us move forward with it all, but I definitely want to see us move forward with the money for the district to help kids who are facing
So where is
homelessness.
it at right now? Is it
So
at council?
it's at council, but it was held, and so I don't know if so. I'm going to discuss this with the mayor, but I think either it's appropriate for this committee for it to come back to committee and the committee to kind of break it apart, or for it to just move forward to council and we do that there.
Well, we still decide that at council, though.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
You're just getting us
I'm just giving a heads up to the committee on what's coming and what we voted on to move forward. So with that, there are no further updates. So the committee, seeing no further business before us, is adjourned. Thank you.